Hello everyone, my name's Mispa. Welcome back to another video. In the first part of the video, I'm going to read a little extract from the Country Diary of an Edwardian Lady. So I'm going to read a little extract from a page in January, and then I'm going to share some images from a walk that I did in Dunham Massey. You could see the very first signs of the spring flowers beginning to shoot through the ground. So after that, in the second part of the video, I want to discuss one of my favourite novels, Jane Eyre. So first of all, reading from the Country Diary. So this is from January the 23rd. Sharp frost and thick fog in the early morning. The fog cleared off about 9:30 a.m. and the sun shone brightly. Went for a country walk. Every twig on every tree and bush was outlined in silver tracery against the sky. Some of the dead grasses and seed vessels growing by the roadside were specially beautiful, every detail of them sparkling with frost crystals in the sunshine. I saw great flocks of rooks and starlings down on the fields, and a pair of beautiful bullfinches in a hawthorn bush. The gorse was in blossom till within a week or two ago, but the sharp frosts of the past week have nipped off the bloom. The mild winter has brought out hazel catkins wonderfully early. The small green flowers are fully expanded on some of the catkins, and the pretty little red stars of the female flowers are appearing. The green leaves are out on the woodbine too, making little spots of green among the undergrowth. So welcome back for the second part of the video, where I'm going to talk about Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. So the reasons why I recommend this book, there are three reasons. First of all, the actual character of Jane Eyre herself. She is an absolutely amazing character in fiction. We see her as a child. She's an orphan brought up by a very cruel aunt, and then she goes to a school where she's mistreated. So she has this incredibly unhappy childhood upbringing, and that makes her a very strong person. The fact that she's survived and she's overcome these hardships means that there's something different about her. She's this incredibly strong character. She then takes up a role as a governess to a child called Adele, and she goes to a place called Thornfield in Yorkshire, and the owner of the house is Mr. Rochester. And then there's the love story between Mr. Rochester and Jane. So Jane is this poor governess, Mr. Rochester is her employer, but the dialogue between the two shows that actually Jane intellectually is his equal. I think her earlier life struggles have meant that there's something different about her. She will speak to him in such a way that they are actually, they are good for each other. They bring out the best in each other. He clearly sees something in her, even though she describes herself as small and plain and insignificant, but he's drawn to her. He is this incredibly brooding, dark, Byronic hero. He's stubborn, he's manipulative, but inside he's wounded and he is suffering. Then the second reason, so the first reason is the character of Jane herself. The second reason is the story, the plot. It's a real page turner. So you want to know what happens to Jane. She has this love affair with Mr. Rochester. Mr. Rochester asks her to marry him, and there should be a happily ever after. That's where most novels would end. In Jane Eyre, there's the twist, and we learn that there is a first Mrs. Rochester who's alive. She's being held prisoner in the attic. So at this point, this is the middle of the book, so there's a great twist here. And Jane, even though she loves Mr. Rochester, she refuses to remain with him and be his mistress or enter into bigamy. So even though she's alone, she's friendless, she has no family, no money, she leaves. And there's this great twist in the novel where she has to stay true to her beliefs and her principles. The dialogue and the monologues are incredible. Charlotte Bronte writes these wonderful speeches where Jane talks about how her morals are there, not just for when there's no temptation, but for times when, you know, she is tempted, she still must be true to her own beliefs and her principles. She leaves and she eventually is taken in and looked after by another family, and there's another young man there, and he asks Jane to marry him and go as a missionary with him to India. So there's a twist here, because even though he's suitable and you could see on the surface that him and Jane should get married and they, you know, could have quite a respectable life together, I think what comes through is that passion, which goes against all conventions, would have killed Jane. But to simply do her duty and to marry someone without love would again have killed Jane. So we can see there has to be love and under the right circumstances. So Jane finds it very easy to reject this second proposal. She goes back to find Mr. Rochester and they are together in the end. The third reason to read it, so you have the character of Jane, the wonderful dialogue, the plot, and then the third reason to read it is the fact that it is such a gothic, spooky novel. So when Jane first arrives at Thornfield, mysterious things happen. You hear somebody walking in the night laughing. Mr. Rochester's bed is set on fire. Jane's veil, her wedding veil, is ripped apart in the night. So there's this sinister, menacing atmosphere as well. It's a great book, and I think it's a real novel that shows a great feminist heroine, and it shows, I'll just read a little snippet from the back of it just to illustrate my point. It says that the romance of Jane and Rochester takes on a strange, unforgettable atmosphere that lifts it above the level of melodrama. But Charlotte Bronte intended more. She portrayed the refusal of a spirited, intelligent woman to accept her appointed place in society. And when it was first published, she actually published it under a name of Currer Bell. She didn't publish it under her own name because I think the views were so shocking that Victorian society would have been shocked to think that a woman could have written these views, that the views of equality, of feminism. A final note, there is references made to Mr. Rochester's first wife. She's a Creole, she's from Jamaica, so there's references to her, and also to people in India. When one of the characters wants to go as a missionary, there's references made to people in India, and I think the language is not acceptable today, so we would not accept those views now. But this is a Victorian novel written in Victorian times, and for that reason, even though you will find those views here, I think you have to accept it's part of this book, and I would still recommend this as a great book to read. There's also the way that they deal with mental illness, the fact that to us it seems so incredibly shocking that if a wife has a mental illness, the husband has the power to either lock her up in an institution or to simply lock her in a room in the house, and society would accept it. So that just shows where we are today compared to when the novel was written. However, it's one of my favourite books and I thoroughly recommend it as a good read.